Hello and welcome to part 3 of this video series on making ancient Levantine pottery from wild locally sourced clay. In part 1, we found and processed this wild clay, and in part 2, we formed it into pieces inspired by ancient Levantine pottery. But part 3 is where things really get interesting. In this video, we're firing the clay.
I think a lot of them survived.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Firing clay is where the rubber meets the road. It's a violent process that can be explosive or transformative, depending on if our pieces can stand the heat of this fire. After days of forming and drying, our pottery pieces inspired by ancient Levantine pottery are finally ready for their most crucial test. The raw clay will now be hardened into something that can withstand time itself. Yet there's always a risk. Will the fire be kind, or will it crack and destroy all the hard work that came before? In this outdoor fire pit, just like the ancient potters did, we will put our pieces to the test and hope they survive this explosive and transformative process. The first step when firing your pottery outdoors is preheating your pots, and this is done to remove any bits of excess moisture that may remain in the pots even after letting them dry to bone dry. So the way we do this is we light a primary fire within the fire pit or within wherever you're lighting your fire and put the pots near it. And this will help them get a little bit hot, but not too hot to experience thermal shock, but just hot enough to start extracting those last bits of moisture that might remain in the clay. Now, this can also be done in an oven, and a lot of people like to do it that way. You can just put your oven on low or even on relatively high and put your pieces in there for about an hour, and they should be good and preheated. Once the pots are nice and preheated, and the initial primary fire has burned down to coals, you basically want to start stacking your pieces inside the fire pit. Now you can see here that I have some excess little pottery shards that are already fired that I'm using as kiln furniture. So I'm basically using these to stack my pieces on top of to ensure that they don't have any direct contact with the coals. And then after stacking all of these, I'm going to go ahead and place some cover shards on top of them to protect them from the brunt of the radiation force of the fire, and also to protect them from that carbonization, because I'm not looking for that black smudged effect. If you are looking for that black smudged effect on your pottery, you don't have to take this step, and you can just go ahead and put your pieces straight directly in there on the bed of coals, and they'll be good to go. It's fine if your pieces are actually touching each other or touching the cover shards, because there's no glaze on these pieces, so they're not going to be sticking to each other anyway. So here you can see we are smashing these pieces of broken pottery that we purchased from a pottery salesman on the side of the road to turn them into cover shards. And the next step will be stacking these cover shards in a way that they'll cover the pieces entirely from the hottest part of the heat of the fire, while still allowing the pieces to breathe and also allowing them to get a little bit of that heat, just enough to turn them into ceramics, without it being enough to completely destroy them or melt the earthenware clay that we're using.
Nice.
Once you're done stacking the cover shards, the next step is to actually start the secondary fire. This fire is the one that we want to get as hot as 750 to 1000 degrees Celsius. And this is the fire that will actually transform the pots from clay to ceramics. For this fire, you want to make sure that you're stacking the wood in a teepee pattern, and you want to make sure that you have enough fuel to actually keep this fire going for around 30 minutes. That's the way that you're really going to be able to transform this clay into ceramics and ensure that it's getting hot enough for long enough to make that transformation complete. So even as the fire is going on, you're going to want to keep adding more and more wood to make sure that that fire is going to last long enough.
Started a crack. I don't know what that was. That might not have been a crack. It might have been pieces folding.
No, that was definitely a crack, and it's pretty unmistakable when you hear your pottery cracking like that in the fire, and it's not a nice feeling. My heart just completely dropped into my stomach. I was afraid that I lost all the pieces. But anyway, what else could I do? I just let the fire burn down, and then later on I had to come in to check on and see what happened. Looking in here, I saw a lot of pieces of cracked pottery at the bottom, but I think I saw some whole pieces in there too. So after letting it cool down a little bit more, I started removing the cover shards to see what we could find in there.
Should I just take this off?
Yeah.
How's it looking?
It's looking like we have some pieces.
Yeah, it is, it is.
Oh,
Oh my god, wow.
it's only that one that shattered.
I think a lot of them survived.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Wallah, all the big ones survived.
I think so, yeah.
I think one shattered only.
I
Give
think
it
so.
5 more
I think
minutes
so.
so it cools off so it doesn't
Yeah,
break.
yeah, we're not going to take them out yet, but that's a great sign.
Wow.
Look at that smile.
Hero.
Video.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is in one piece.
You hear that ring?
Is that good?
Yeah. That means it's ceramic. It's no longer just clay.
Do it
Woohoo!
again, do it again.
After letting the pieces cool for another 5 or 10 minutes, I started taking them out, and I was actually really happy. Almost all of them survived. The only one that cracked, and actually it was more than a crack, it was a complete shatter, was that big Oya that I made. And the reason why is because it was far too moist. Either I didn't preheat it properly or I didn't let it dry long enough. It was the most recently made piece, so I think I should have just let it dry for longer. And I shouldn't have even tried to fire it in the first place. But other than that, everything survived, and I was really, really happy with it. You can see here the big jar coming out, probably the piece I'm most proud of. So, I made it back home, I wiped down the pots, and I'm really, really happy with the results. So check out these pots here. This is the hand-thrown cup, hand-thrown and hand-trimmed. It came out really nicely. I really love the texture that's on it because of the trimming, because of the temper, the sand that I put in here. This is, I think, one of the only ones that actually has temper in it. And I think it turned out really well. I remember it was cracked beforehand from the trimming process, so that crack was not new. There might be a hairline crack up here, potentially from the firing. There's some carbonization here, but overall really happy with this, and makes a nice ring. This is one of my favorite pieces, the perfume jar. I think it turned out really nicely. It's just kind of a little decorative piece. There is a crack that happened here. I believe that happened in the firing, but not catastrophic enough to break the whole pot. So, happy with that. Here is the biggest piece, and the piece that I was worried about, but makes a beautiful ring, and I'm really happy with the color that came out on this one. It's like a little bit of a darker red, reddish, orangish, brownish tone, whatever you want to call that, than the rest of the pieces. So really happy with this one. I love the shape, and again, it's more of just a decorative one. There are some cracks in the inside, but I don't see anything on the outside, so nothing that propagated all the way through. I'm very happy with this one. Now this is the Allah, and this is the one whose brother was destroyed. But look, it's looking pretty good. I like the different colors that are kind of appearing on this one from the clay body. And the lid is here. Let me see if I can get this to ring. I'm just really happy overall. They're all ringing, they're all feeling like ceramics. And this one, the lid, fits on nicely. And this one I'll actually put to use in my garden. And then we have the pinch pot bowl with the Berber Amazigh designs inspired. Beautiful ring to this one. And no cracks at all in this one. This might be the biggest success out of all of them in terms of the firing. And lastly, the oil lamp. I wasn't sure what was going to happen with this one. There is a crack down the middle of the inside, but the crack does not reach the outside. So I'm going to try actually putting some oil in this one and a wick and lighting it up. And I'll show you how that works. But overall, these are the results of my locally sourced and ancient pottery journey. And overall, I really couldn't be happier. I lost one piece in the firing, that was the bigger olla or oya. But you know, all of these survived. You know, I was really scared during the firing because we heard that big pop. We heard two pops actually. One was the oya and the other was the lid. And that's because they weren't sufficiently dry. I think I shouldn't have even tried to fire those. They were not dry enough. They were the most recent pieces I made. But I was excited about them, so I decided to give them a try. I preheated them, of course, but of course it wasn't enough. And once I pulled out the shard from the fire, I could see that there was still some moisture within there that had caused that pop. So I definitely shouldn't have put that in. But other than that, they all worked out brilliantly and I couldn't be happier. So thank you for joining along in this ancient pottery journey. Please, if you've enjoyed this video, if you've learned something, drop a like, subscribe to my channel. This is my first video, so you can expect to see more stuff like this in the future. Thank you for following along, and good luck on your own pottery journeys, whatever those may be. Thanks.